12 noon Eastern on a Wednesday. Welcome inside the vault. This is your Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. I'm Bobby Trossett, and today's live stream is brought to you by our friends and this month's Small Business Patreon title sponsor, one of our sponsors within the Small Business Patreon title line of things, our friends at High Grounds Cafe. There's something brewing in Baltimore. Sarah will be joining us in about 15 or 20 minutes right now. She's handling a family matter, which was pre-planned. And we've got a lot to discuss today as a result. First and foremost, obviously, this is a two-stream day. We'll have obviously this Ravens Lunch Hour live stream for you right now. And then coming up later this evening at 7:30, we'll have our annual NFL schedule release ahead of course, the 2024 regular season. So lots to discuss, lots to get into. It's going to be a busy day, but we'll begin with Emmanuel Acho's ridiculous, if you ask me, disingenuous advice for Lamar Jackson, and also a ridiculous take of his that he put out on Fox Sports within the last couple of days. We'll also have our first AFC North check-in of the offseason. ESPN's Brooke Pryor will rejoin the show to take a look at what's going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Arnett in Maryland has officially been tracked down, and after his hilarious call into the Rich Eisen show earlier in the week, he'll be joining us around 12:45 or so, and looking forward to all of that and more. But again, former NFL player turned Fox Sports analyst and personality Emmanuel Acho, who I know some of you feel a certain type of way about. He was on Fox this week, and the discussion point at hand was the following. Do you like the situation that the Chiefs find themselves in, being that it's back-to-back AFC North opponents to begin their season, and it's back-to-back rematches of the last two AFC Championship title games? Emmanuel says yes, but found a way to somehow, some way, throw in, I don't know if a shot is the right way to explain it, but this is what he had to say to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens if they lose to the Kansas City Chiefs on opening night of this 2024 NFL season, September 5th, several months from now.
Be better for the Chiefs. Opening the season with the Ravens and the Bengals, it is a win-win for the Chiefs. Number one, if you beat those two teams, you say again, yo, we own y'all. It's our league. Get out of here. Y'all not on our level. If you lose, you say, hey, we started so last year. We only won 10 games, and we still won a Super Bowl. So if you lose to the Ravens and you lose to the Bengals, cool, y'all beat us in the regular season, but y'all know what type of time it is when it comes to playoffs. And if you beat them, don't even attend a game versus us again. Like Lamar Jackson, don't even show up on the field. Joe Burrow, stop wasting your time. Joe Burrow, you was hurt last year. I won a Super Bowl. That's what Pat's saying. Lamar, you had the best team you've ever seen in your career last year, and I still beat you. So if I beat you now, you'll never beat me. And if I lose to you, it's the regular season. It's a win-win for the Chiefs.
Why is everything so hyperbolic with this guy? Like, I agree with the sentiment that, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, who begin their quest for a three-peat as back-to-back Super Bowl champions, right? And the reigning champions. Of course, they should be excited about whoever they draw on opening night and week 2 and week 3 and so on and so forth. They have earned the right to feel any type of way about any type of team in this league because they are that good and they are the new dynasty in the NFL. What I don't agree with, and again, it might have been said in jest or it might have been said just in a hyperbolic way, but when he essentially suggests that Lamar Jackson and the Ravens shouldn't even show up to the building the next time they play the Chiefs, which could very well be in January, several months after the season begins, September 5th, to me, that is ridiculous. Listen to this again.
And you lose to the Bengals, cool, y'all beat us in the regular season, but y'all know what type of time it is when it comes to playoffs. And if you beat them, don't even attend a game versus us again. Like Lamar Jackson, don't even show up on the field. Joe Burrow, stop wasting your time. Joe Burrow, you was hurt last year. I won a Super Bowl. That's what Pat's saying. Lamar, you had the best team you've ever seen in your career last year, and I still beat you. So if I beat you now, you'll never beat me. And if I lose to you, it's the regular season. It's a win-win for the Chiefs.
That's a loser mindset. That's a fearful mindset, and that's a fearful world to live in if you're Lamar Jackson. And he even coupled in Joe Burrow to that conversation. To me, my problem with this is, did you see the Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger, the Ravens with Joe Flacco, Peyton Manning back in the day. Did you see these guys who broke through, who won at least a title with their respective organization during the Brady era? Did you see them just lay down? Now, did all of these teams get dominated throughout the Brady era, and was it one-sided? Yes. But all three of those examples that I just mentioned, you can throw Drew Brees and New Orleans in there as well. They didn't just lay down. They found their breakthrough. I'm sure if you asked them, you wish that it would have been more of a breakthrough, multiple titles throughout that era in New England. Did they just lay down, though? No. Were they in the same stratosphere as what Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the New England Patriots accomplished? No. And right now, you can say that about Baltimore, Cincinnati, Buffalo, right? All these other teams that are chasing what Kansas City has put together in recent years. But you're going to expect them to not feel like they could break through at some point? The Ravens were 2 plays away from breaking through into something that they had never been before throughout Lamar Jackson's 6 seasons in the NFL. They were 2 plays away from playing for a Lombardi in Las Vegas. So you think they're just going to go home and cry about it? It's a hyperbolic way to react to, again, the sentiment about how the Chiefs should be excited about whoever they have. I get it. And it really is a win-win for Kansas City. If they win on the night that their banner goes up and their rings are divvied out, great. That's like gravy. If they lose, we've been there, done that. We had one of the worst starts in terms of recent memory last year, and we looked so pedestrian throughout the season, and yet we still win a Super Bowl. It's a win-win, of course, for Kansas City. But to think that Lamar Jackson and the pride that he has as a 2-time MVP, right? And the Baltimore Ravens with the pride that they have and the dominance that John Harbaugh has shown in opening week, in the opening week 1 throughout his career and during his tenure in Baltimore, you think they're just going to come, and even if they do lose on September 5th, to think that they're just going to lay down the rest of the year or lay down the next time that they play them potentially in January is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. That wasn't the only ridiculous thing that Emmanuel Acho had to say recently. Here's clip number 2.
The Ravens aren't a threat because last year they were as good as they could be. Had the number 1 defense in football, and it wasn't particularly close, and I love the San Francisco 49ers. Lamar Jackson had another statistical MVP caliber season. Last year, they got a new offensive coordinator, and everybody and their mama said they got to run the ball more. But then we got to the playoffs, and everybody was complaining that they didn't run the ball more.
What about this year?
This year, the team's worse. Like, the Ravens are substantially worse. You lose all-pro Patrick Queen, who coupled with Roquan Smith was a dude. You lose 9.5 sacks to Davion Clowney, who had 9.5 sacks. You lose 7 interception Geno Stone. So you lose your leading interceptor, your second leading tackler, your second leading sack man. The defense just isn't as good. So, and bump all that, you lose your defensive coordinator. Ask the Philadelphia Eagles how it was when they lost their defensive coordinator. So I don't think that the Ravens are a threat, because if they were a threat, they would have been a threat last year, and they weren't even threatening.
Okay, so on paper, you could certainly make the argument that the Ravens are worse off than they were a year ago, right? And I think that's what he's going with here. The loss of Mike McDonald looms large, and perhaps even more so than the offensive line, and the question marks surrounding that new group and how much change that group has underwent, perhaps even bigger than that. A huge question mark is, how will Zach Orr fill the shoes that are left behind from one of the game's bright minds who got a great head coaching opportunity in Seattle in Mike McDonald? That's a massive question. There's no question about that. But the Ravens thought highly enough of Zach Orr, who's only a few years removed from his NFL career, to bring him in as the next, to promote him from within and tap him to be their next defensive coordinator. That's not something that you do if you don't have an abundance of confidence that he can be that guy for you, right? And that you can allow him to grow within your system. And you can surround him around the talent personnel-wise, but also the preparation-wise staff from a staff perspective. And by the way, we've got some breaking news along the lines of the NFL schedule. The Texans are going to host the Ravens in Week 17 on Christmas Day, a game that's going to be exclusively aired on Netflix. So CJ Stroud and Lamar Jackson, a rematch from last year's playoff game in the divisional round. And now, is there a time attached to that? Because Christmas Day, Mama Trossett's not going to be pleased with that. But Jordan Schultz is the first one on this. The Ravens and Texans in Houston will be playing on Christmas Day, a game that's going to be exclusively available to you on Netflix. So that came out just a second ago, and it caught my eye. So there you have it. And look who joined a little bit earlier than expected. Did you hear the breaking news as of seconds ago, partner?
I did not. What? What is it?
Well, it caught my eye as TweetDeck often does when it's off to the side. Yeah. I'm in the middle of Acho content, as you know. And Jordan Schultz tweets that the Ravens and Texans are playing on Christmas Day in Houston.
Oh!
Yeah. So.
Oh, see, and I'm still expecting, and I could be wrong, but I've been predicting Thanksgiving for the Har Bowl again.
And you might not be wrong there. And if that's the case, we're not looking at a great holiday couple months, are we? So the Texans and Ravens, Week 17 on Christmas Day, a game that's going to be exclusively airing on Netflix, Jordan Schultz says. Stroud and Jackson rematch from last year's divisional round playoff game, and back-to-back years, the Ravens draw a Christmas game.
Listen, if the NBC numbers, which I know they were anything like our numbers on Christmas night,
for sure.
If it's not broke, don't fix it, because that was one heck of a game. And then this is a rematch. We're talking about the rematch of the AFC Championship game, Ravens Chiefs. Now on Week 17, number one, you said Week 17, right?
Yep.
This isn't Week 18, so it's not the final week of the season. I was going to say, finally, we're not finishing against the Bengals. It very well could be against the Bengals in Week 18. Oh, that'll be brutal. But you're already showing the Ravens big time respect. You got Week 1 to open up against the Chiefs. Now you're giving them Christmas night. And
Jordan said Christmas Day.
Oh, Christmas. Okay. Oh, that's worse.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Have all the Christmas festivities done with the kiddos.
For sure.
If they put this at like 1 p.m., I'm going to be ticked.
For sure.
No, we need a night game. We need Christmas night. That's no good.
Now, maybe there isn't a time attached to it, so we'll have to wait and see. But Christmas Day seems to me like it's going to be 1 or 4:25. So.
Oh, woof.
We'll have to see there. But that just coming out moments ago. And we will revisit the Emmanuel Acho content later on in this stream. We have a special guest, as promised, joining us a couple minutes early. Brooke Pryor from ESPN, who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's a friend of the show. She's been on many times before. We figured this would be a good start to looking at the AFC North. We've talked about that in recent weeks. And so we're going to look at Pittsburgh with Brooke, and then maybe later on in the spring, early summer, we'll take a look at the Houstons now that we know that's definitely going to be a marquee game, along with the Kansas Cities of the world and things of that nature. So without further ado, special guest Brooke Pryor rejoins us inside the vault. And Brooke, so good to see you. Hope you're enjoying your off season.
I am, although are we sure it's the off season? Because with all of the schedule leaks coming out, I feel like I'm instantly thrown into the regular season, and I'm like booking hotels and trying to strategize plans and when I can take vacations. Like, this is our Super Bowl. Trying to figure out, like, what do I get to do with my life for the rest of the year? So it's like the most exciting day of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, we obviously can't go anywhere for Christmas around here. So what do we know about the Steelers schedule?
You know, there aren't any confirmed things. The Steelers are not one of the teams that, leaks anything out early, but I have seen the reports that the Steelers also may be occupied on Christmas.
Oh,
perhaps playing host to the Super Bowl winners. is what I've seen, which means I will spend my Christmas chasing around a certain international superstar around Acrisure Stadium, which is, thrilling for me. And I'm already like, I got to start getting on my treadmill and practicing like how to take quick steps without looking like a stalker around Acrisure Stadium. It's a very fine line.
We all look like stalkers, I feel like, when we're out there. It comes with it. So, wow. What if the Steelers get and Chiefs then would probably be Christmas night then, yeah?
I haven't seen
afternoon?
any times. I don't know if there's going to be a Christmas night or if it's late afternoon and early afternoon. I mean, it's funny. I did a poll on Twitter earlier, a very informal poll about what do fans think about your team playing on Christmas or Thanksgiving or playing on a holiday. And if they're going to play on a holiday, do you want them to play on Christmas or Thanksgiving?
Right.
And it's been very split, which is about kind of what I expected, because I'm thinking like, I don't have many things that I'm a fan of at this point in my life. I feel like I'm very just calloused over in terms of my fandom, but I would not want UNC football or UNC basketball to play on either holiday, because my whole day will be ruined. Not only because it'll affect my mood, but like my husband's a big South Carolina fan. If South Carolina football loses to Clemson on Thanksgiving, it's bad for everyone. And I don't want that. So, I understand the value for the NFL in having holiday games. It's a lot of eyeballs. It's a lot of marketing dollars. But for the actual fan bases, I get the sense that it's mostly an exercise in torture. And having to rearrange your whole day or trying to rearrange it, and maybe having family members that don't understand how important your fandom is. I know my family does not have great cell service. They just got high-speed internet a couple months ago. So if I was at home, I would not be partaking in watching football. I remember having to listen to Ohio State, Michigan on the radio one year because we went Christmas tree shopping up in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina. So it's a struggle, but the schedule is going to be what the schedule is, and we'll just have to roll with it.
Well, it sounds to me like it's going to be very touch and go in the Pryor household this upcoming holiday season. So we wish you the best along those lines, Brooke. But if you're just tuning in, again, we're about to transition to some Steelers talk just to take a look at what their offseason has shaped up like to date. But the breaking news from Jordan Schultz is that the Texans and Ravens will reportedly on week 17 on Christmas Day match up in a game that's going to be exclusively airing on Netflix for you. So that's the latest there. Let's talk some Steelers, because that's why we brought you back in, Brooke. We always appreciate your perspective. And, most notably, and this is the offseason transaction list just for March and April. I know there's been some moves made in May so far, halfway through the month. But most notably, the quarterback room is significantly revamped. And I got to wonder, so far from your vantage point, what have your observations been of the way that is evolving between Russ and Justin now coexisting within that room?
Yeah, I think the Steelers are being really intentional about how they manage this quarterback competition, battle, depth chart, however you kind of want to phrase it, because Mike Tomlin has said 500 million times this offseason that Russell Wilson has the pole position. He's not saying he's going to be the starter, but he's in the pole position, which means that Russell is the leader of this quarterback room. He's the one that's organizing the offseason workouts, that's, leading things in the building, in OTAs. He's really made an emphasis about going out and being with the Steelers in the community. I had a couple friends that were at Dave & Buster's the other day, and Russell Wilson was walking in to join Cam Hayward in an event that he was putting on at Dave & Buster's. So Russell is really, I think, trying to step into this leadership void that's existed on the offense for several years. They don't have the same infrastructure of veterans that the defense has, which has kind of helped the defense run pretty seamlessly in terms of, leadership. There's not a lot of infighting. It's a pretty well-oiled machine, except for when injuries, which always happen, seem to kind of throw a wrench in their plans. But the offense, on the other hand, between the offensive coordinator, the quarterback issues, the offensive line issues, just felt really disjointed for several seasons. And so I think that the quick fix for that is to not only bring in Russell Wilson, but to say, hey, you are our leader. We'll sort out the on-field stuff when it gets to training camp. And in terms of that, I expect Russell Wilson to be the starter week 1. I don't think they're shutting the door on Justin Fields, but I think that essentially all signs point to Russell Wilson will be the starter. But I hope that they manage this quarterback competition differently and better than they did when it was Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. And we saw Mitch Trubisky take at what felt like 98% of the reps with the starters in that training camp. And then when Kenny Pickett got thrown in at halftime of week 4 a couple years ago, he didn't have the chemistry and the rapport with his skill players and with the offensive line that Trubisky had. And it took a little bit of time to get everybody in sync and get the ball rolling toward the end of the season. So I think and hope that they will be more methodical and intentional with how they manage this, while also understanding they only have each quarterback under contract for this season. So they want to win now. They're very much showing an all-in approach to this roster build, to the way they're looking at this season, while also understanding they've got to plan somewhat for the future and get a good evaluation of both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson to understand, well, who, if either or both, do we want to carry on through the future?
So how are the traders fitting in so far? No, there's been a lot of hate towards Patrick Queen. I'm not one of those. I say go get paid where you can get paid, but he's definitely the enemy now. How has he been fitting in along with Elliott? Elliott's been gone from Baltimore for a second, but how are they fitting in so far?
Yeah, I've heard all good things about both of those guys. And I think that Patrick Queen is, to me, the best addition the Steelers have made this offseason. I think he's kind of crazy to say that the best inside linebacker on the market is going under the radar, but that's what happens when you completely redo your quarterback room. But I think that Patrick Queen is the most important addition for this team this offseason because of the way the rest of this division is shaped. I mean, it was kind of funny. I forget the exact order of things, but I think it was the Ravens add Derrick Henry, and then like a day later or an afternoon later, the Steelers signed Patrick Queen. It felt like a 1-2 punch, like hey, we see that you are continuing to beef up your ground game. We're going to make sure that we have an answer to that. It feels like, and you guys know, this division is one that's going to be won and lost in the trenches and in how each team kind of dominates that line of scrimmage and that time of possession. And I think that Patrick Queen is the perfect addition for this defense, especially considering the inside linebacker core was really strong. I think was a point of strength for the Steelers entering last season. And then they kind of all of a sudden in the middle of the year had this succession of injuries that really decimated that group, from Quan Alexander's Achilles to then Cole Holcomb with this catastrophic knee injury. And now they still have a Landon Roberts, who's a thumper and really good, but he's an older player. He's not necessarily an every down backer. And that's what Patrick Queen is. So I think he is really complementary to that group. And I think makes this defense so much stronger.
Is there any concern? I don't know if concern is the right word. I personally am curious to see Patrick Queen without Roquan again. And I want to give him his flowers. I felt like he was doing better and started ascending a bit before Roquan came, but it was only like a couple weeks. And then Roquan came and it was just like another level. Is there any concern about that in Pittsburgh, or is it just like, no, we know he's our guy and that wasn't a result of Roquan?
You know, from people I've talked with to, people within the Steelers organization, people that have coached Patrick Queen in the past with the Ravens, it sounds like there may have been some hesitancy about his production and his ability to really, I think, maximize his potential early in his career. But the feeling is, yes, Roquan helped him unlock it to get to that next level. But just because he's not playing with Roquan doesn't mean that he's going to regress or not be able to maximize his potential. I think that they like the pairing of him and a Landon Roberts and whatever kind of version you get from Cole Holcomb. I think that it feels like he's been able to hit that next level. And now that they've seen the potential, they know how to keep getting that out of him. But I mean, it is going to be tough. They've seen, TJ Watt kind of go through, he hasn't necessarily had a drop off between different partners on the edge between Bud Dupree and Alex Highsmith. And then, sometimes Marcus Golden rotating in. But I think it's kind of a similar thing that Patrick Queen's going to have to go through of developing chemistry, learning how to play off the other guys and fitting into this system. But I don't think that there's a massive concern that there's going to be a drop off with him playing without Roquan Smith.
Brooke, if you could revisit the draft last month and just kind of let us know how you evaluated it. Obviously, the headliners from the outside looking in were Fa'utanu in the first, and then Roman Wilson in the third or fourth was Roman.
Every time I think it's fourth, it's third, and every time I think it's third, it's fourth. So
it's the third. I have it right now in front of me. So he's the third, and then they went with their potential starting center, right? They're expecting Zach Frazier in the second to be their starting center week 1 out of West Virginia.
Yep.
So so I guess just looking at it from 1,000 feet up, how'd you evaluate their weekend?
I think it was a really good draft for the Steelers. I was really impressed with not only the haul that they got, but the fact that they were so patient in getting it. I mean, a year ago, we saw Omar Khan really wheel and deal. He trades up to get Broderick Jones. I believe he ended up getting an extra pick in the second round. I mean, they already had they had that pick from Joey Porter Jr. or from the Chase Claypool trade to get Joey Porter Jr. But we saw, it kind of felt like a year ago, Omar was really aggressive in the way that he managed the draft. And I kind of expected to see the same thing again this year. And instead he did the opposite and held pat and didn't trade at all in the draft and got a really, I think, strong group with high value, high upside. I think the Zach Frazier pick was a really big one because you're right. They need a starting center. They released Mason Cole. That was the most pressing need, I think, going into the draft. And the fact that they were able to get a starting capable center in the second round while also adding a guy that could start maybe left tackle, maybe right tackle, Troy Fautanu. He was at right tackle in rookie minicamp, but that could also be Mike Tomlin saying, hey, we want to give you guys something to write about. So we're going to put this left tackle at right. So you guys have a storyline to carry you through until training camp. But then also Peyton Wilson, I believe he was a 4th round pick, the inside linebacker out of NC State. He's someone to add to that Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, Patrick Queen rotation, who is a really good linebacker when he's healthy, which he was last year. And some of his past injury history caused him to drop there and get a good value for that pick. And then they also add Mason McCormick, a guard, so they have more depth there on the line. So I think that this was a draft where the Steelers went in and said, here's our wish list, here are our needs, and they stayed true to their board and they didn't get antsy. And they really, I think, checked off all the boxes. The biggest holes, though, they did get Roman Wilson, but I still am not convinced that they have a strong number 2 receiver. And cornerback, I don't know that they really addressed that by picking up Ryan Watts in the 6th. They obviously let Patrick Peterson walk, let Levi Wallace walk. I think that they need to add maybe one more person there opposite of Joey Porter Jr. unless they feel that strongly about Dante Jackson. But I still think that that's going to be a weak spot going into training camp.
Well, based off of the Steelers' wide receiver draft history, I've been joking that Roman Wilson's going to be like the next Pro Bowler. Of course, you guys just always seem to like, we can't draft wide receivers. Mine is Zay Flowers for the life of us, but you guys seem to do well. But that was my next question. There were a lot of rumors kind of out there swirling that the Steelers were trying to get like a big name trade, like Ayuk out of San Francisco, or there were some other names. Is there any truth to any of that?
I haven't been able to nail down the exact truth of it all. I'm sure there was interest, right? I mean, you're always going to kick the tires on those guys. From what I have heard, though, from the other side of things, is that the 49ers and the Broncos weren't all that interested. There wasn't real interest in dealing Ayuk or dealing Courtland Sutton. I mean, I think that, the Steelers would like to add another receiver to that group, but then you also see the free agent signings that they've made and the ones they haven't made, I think maybe speaks to how Arthur Smith envisions this offense. I mean, they could have had Tyler Boyd, they could have had Marquez Valdez-Scantling, these guys that went for pretty inexpensive deals elsewhere. Instead, the Steelers opt to bring in essentially any wide receiver that played for Arthur Smith in either Tennessee or Atlanta. To me, it says, hey, we're going to value the run game more, and we can kind of have a rotating cast a revolving door of wide receivers behind George Pickens, because we're not going to emphasize the receiving game quite as much, that we need a strong number 2. I don't necessarily agree with that. I have some concerns about defenses just doubling and blanketing George Pickens. You better be sure that your offensive line is as strong as you want it to be to run the ball well with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. But that seems to be the approach that the Steelers are going with and that they think can be successful.
Brooke, last one from me. As you alluded to earlier on, like a very polarizing discussion last year, especially when we had you on, was the controversy around the offensive coordinator position. And then they made that very rare in-season move, and we all remember what happened after that. The decision for Mike Tomlin to go after, a former head coach in Arthur Smith, how has that been welcomed from your perspective, the temperature of the fan base, and do you see that as an upgrade?
I think the fan base was hoping for someone like a Clint Kubiak or Cliff Kingsbury, somebody that, has an air raid style offense, something that has maybe more of an electric downfield passing game. That being said, I think that this was the right fit and one that fits the Steelers historically as an organization, as a team that very much values the ground game, that wants a strong offensive line. I mean, that's Arthur Smith. This guy was a tight ends coach at his core, has a lot of experience working with the offensive line. He wants to use a lot of jumbo packages, a lot of blocking, doing things in the trenches, and have things kind of start from the ground, which I think that's what the Steelers want their identity to be historically and moving into the future, even as it feels like the rest of the league is trending toward being a quarterback happy league where you win with elite quarterback play. The Steelers are kind of saying, all right, we're going to let you guys zag. We're going to zig over here, and we're going to stick to the ground. We're going to dominate time of possession. We're going to dominate in the trenches, and we're going to win that way. We're going to make sure that your high-powered quarterback doesn't get the ball, which maybe that works by having a dominant defense and a strong run game. I think that because of the offensive struggles that the Steelers had in terms of leadership, infrastructure, and identity, hiring a former head coach, I think, answers some of those problems. A guy that has NFL experience as the head coach, offensive coordinator experience in the NFL. I think that things will just be handled in a more maybe professional manner, and in a way that there's respect and buy-in from the get-go. I think that things are just going to run smoother internally, and that's going to go a long way, especially when you factor in having a veteran guy like Russell Wilson, and you have Isaac Seumalo on the offensive line, who's also a respected vet. Najee Harris going into his 4th season. I just think that this is a group with more experience and more maturity on the offensive side, and that should really help out.
Okay, last question for me. If do you have a post-draft pre-training camp kind of AFC North power ranking?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I would go. Oh, it's so tough.
It is.
I think, I want to say Browns, Ravens, Steelers, Bengals.
Wow.
Only because I am not convinced. I want to see more how Joe Burrow progresses with that wrist injury, with recovering from it, because it was very telling to me when he said that there isn't another quarterback or somebody else at his position that he can go to kind of monitor from how should this rehab go, what to expect, those kind of things. And I just think that that's a really significant injury for a quarterback to come back from. He talked about how other guys that have had this injury don't have to worry about the kind of wrist mobility and the things that he needs to do with the ball. I think that the Browns are a really complete team, except for the quarterback position. That is a big question mark, but I think that Jameis Winston is an upgrade as a backup quarterback. Although it's not as close as the gap is closer than I thought it would be if you just told me that they finished the year with Joe Flacco. I don't know that it's a significant upgrade from Joe Flacco. And then the Ravens, the Ravens lost a lot of pieces from last year's team, but Lamar Jackson is the equalizer there, right? I mean, he's the Patrick Mahomes of that team, where you hope that you can subtract everything around him and he makes up the difference because he's that good. And so I think that this is going to be a real test to see how much he's able to keep doing that. But I like the addition of Tez Walker as, someone that went to UNC, watched a lot of UNC football games. I'm very familiar with his story. He is a great addition. And one that I was texting with a couple of Steelers people who also have UNC connections and going, oh, man, we didn't get Tez Walker. We're going to have to see him twice a year. This really stinks. So I think that's going to be a really fun ad. And of course, Derrick Henry, it's going to be great too. So I think this is the most competitive division in football yet again. And it makes me really excited for the season.
Cleveland, big love for Cleveland. We're going to remember that. I'll be curious to see
that's really dangerous for me.
Hey, they've been very active this offseason, and Sarah and I are both on record for thinking that there is just this razor thin margin for error in this division. So we'll see how it all plays out. And Brooke, let us know. Well, here's where everybody can follow you for the Pittsburgh perspective, obviously on Twitter or X at BE Pryor, and plug anything else you got coming up this offseason.
Oh man, everything is still very much in the works for the rest of this offseason. We got to see where the schedule takes us and where some of my features come together, but anything that I write will be on ESPN.com or on your televisions on ESPN.
Love it. Love it. The airlines are going to be working tonight too. I'm sure Skyscanner and everything's going to be rolling tonight around 9 Eastern or so, and everything's going to be up and out there and released. So Brooke, we appreciate you, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of your off season. We look forward to catching up again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Brooke.
As always, ESPN's Brooke Pryor, kind enough to spend a few minutes with us.
She put Bengals last.
Yeah, she did. She did. And she really noted that Joe Burrow wrist injury. And maybe there's there's more uncertainty around that and the rehab process.
Yeah, we've been not like we've been digging deep, but I've been on the assumption that he was just going to be back 100% during the season. So
Brooke had Cleveland, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Bengals. Cincinnati. Yep. Let us know in the live chat who your AFC, way too early, AFC North power rankings are right now on May 15th. We're about to dive back into the Emmanuel Acho content before we bring in a special guest who's become very, very famous in the last couple of days. That's Arnett in Maryland. Will be joining us in about 8 minutes from right now. Before we do, again, if you're just tuning in, the Texans and the Ravens, as more announcements or leaks in this case continue to come out about the NFL schedule release, the Texans and Ravens will meet up on Christmas Day, Week 17, in a game that's going to be exclusively airing on Netflix, a rematch of last year's home opener and a rematch more notably of last year's divisional round matchup between these two teams. So earlier on in the stream, we played the 2 clips, Sarah, from Emmanuel Acho. I gave my takes. Essentially, I felt like it was a disingenuous thing to say, whether it's hyperbolic or not, to suggest, whether it's in jest or not, that Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, if they lose on opening night of the season, September 5th in Kansas City, shouldn't show up to the building the next time they play. Did you see Joe Flacco and the Ravens, Peyton Manning back in the day, Eli and the Giants? Did they all lay down when they ultimately broke through in the Tom Brady era in New England? No. Did they win as many games or Super Bowls as all those guys would have liked? Drew Brees, you can count him in that conversation too. No. But they didn't just lay down. That to me is, as you often say, a fear. That's a world of fear. And you don't want to live in that whatsoever.
I didn't hear that clip. I only know the second one. He said if Lamar and the Ravens lose week 1, he shouldn't show up at the Ravens building.
Yeah, ready?
Yeah.
Don't even attend a game season, but y'all know what type of time it is when it comes to playoffs. And if you beat them, don't even attend a game versus us again. Like Lamar Jackson, don't even show up on the field. Joe Burrow, stop wasting your time. Joe Burrow, you was hurt last year. I won a Super Bowl. That's what Pat's saying. Lamar, you had the best team you've ever seen in your career last year, and I still beat you. So if I beat you now, you'll never beat me. And if I lose to you, it's the regular season. It's a win-win for the team.
It's so hyperbolic.
That's it. It's not. Here's my thing. It's not disingenuous. It's disrespectful. And when you combine it with the second clip, which is him saying that the Ravens are not a threat to Chiefs, okay? what he did in that video was state a lot of facts, and then he wrapped it in disrespect.
Yeah.
So the facts are that the Ravens blew it in the AFC Championship game. The facts is the Chiefs have the Ravens number over the last several years. The facts are the Ravens are losing a lot of personnel. He takes those facts and goes another step with the disrespect. And he says they're going to be substantially worse, was his words. They're going to be substantially worse because of the losses. And then you say you're not a threat. So it's one thing to say, hey, they've had your number. And it's another thing to go another step and say, now you're not even a threat. You guys are like the JV team, is what he's saying. So what he's doing here is he's approaching Mike Florist disrespect. Okay.
Florist.
Okay. That's where he's headed. And so you can't necessarily fight back, though, because he has a lot of facts that he's wrapping around with disrespect. And so just like in the Mike Florist scenario, where the Ravens had to bite their tongues, and then they had to go to the 49ers. They had to travel on Christmas Day over to San Francisco. And they had to not only beat them, but they had to beat them. They beat them pretty convincingly. And so for the Ravens to shut down the disrespectful talk, they have to do what they did to the 49ers and then some, because it won't be enough to win week 1, as Emmanuel just said in the clip you just showed. He said, well, if the Chiefs lose, oh, well, it's the beginning of the season. We're for sure making the playoffs, and now you got to go do this in the playoffs. So that's true. So to complete the shutdown of the disrespect, the Ravens have to win week 1, and then they have to do it in the playoffs. So there's a lot of facts, but he's wrapping it in disrespect, and that's exactly what Mike Florist did.
Yeah.
So
no, well said.
It's up to the Ravens to shut it down.
Yeah. And it's only up to them. They're the only ones.
They're the only ones who can.
They're the only ones that could go back and fix that. Well, no, nothing can go back and be fixed from the AFC title game. But they were two. We all remember. If it's 2 plays, if we're talking about a difference of 2 plays, that was between a trip to Cancun or Vegas to play for a Lombardi Trophy, that's fixable. That's not, we got blown out of the frickin' stadium and we shouldn't even think about matching up against them again.
Yeah.
That's like, wow, that's on us, though, especially because those 2 plays were self-inflicted. Like, we should have been in Vegas in their minds, right? From a competitor standpoint. So to think that, you're right, it is disrespectful. And I think that that they'll be fueled by that disrespect in different ways all throughout this offseason, because that's not the first time takes.
If you haven't been fueled enough,
yes.
there's going to be this and a whole lot of other fuel. This for sure isn't going to be the end of it. One other thing about Acho that he said in there, he's talking about how many pieces the Ravens lost. And I don't want to, and we've talked about them. They're for sure questions. Can Trenton Simpson come in for Patrick Queen?
Yeah.
Can one of these young guys step up with Clowney gone? Can Zach Orr replace Mike McDonald? Can all that happen? Those are questions. But what he's what he's saying though is the Ravens can't reload. Hello, those guys that he just named were the reloading. Nobody was talking about any of those guys at this time last year. Nobody was saying, oh, Clowney's going to be a 10-sack guy. He was just under that. Nobody was saying Geno Stone was going to have 7 interceptions. He came in as a backup, and they're all valuable losses. But the point is he's already assuming they can't reload, but those were the pieces that they reloaded with.
Right.
So if they did it once, yes, it's a question if they can do it again, but it's not a fact that they're going to be substantially worse.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's another level of disrespect, saying you lost them all. There's no way. Now, for sure, they blew an opportunity with the championship caliber roster, 1,000%. But but it wasn't Geno Stone that made the Ravens championship caliber.
Right.
It was Lamar Jackson. It was Roquan Smith.
Yep.
It was our 8 blue chip guys, and then you have to get the right depth in between them. That's what we're looking for. Minus Clowney, I think Clowney and Queen are more than depth, but it's not impossible to reload behind those guys.
And the only piece of what he mentioned that maybe doesn't necessarily categorize as like a reload, even though he did have like question marks out the gate of his first month as a defensive coordinator in the NFL, like Mike McDonald after year one, it was pretty clear that this guy was going to be something special.
Yeah.
So like this time last year going into year two, there maybe weren't as many question marks around him, or he was more known than like a Jadeveon Clowney in terms of what he became this year for the Ravens impact wise. And obviously in Gino's case as well. So anyway, good stuff there. We've got a bunch of quick hits to get to, but before we do, Arnett in Maryland became a thing earlier this week when you and I do our usual surfing through YouTube. And we came across this little snippet from the Rich Eisen show, which definitely gave us a chuckle. I don't know where you were when you were watching it. I was on the treadmill at the gym, and I was grinning ear to ear because I thought it was creative. I thought it was hilarious, and it was well said.
It's blasphemous how Lamar Jackson has gotten treated. I saw the CBS rankings that came out.
Okay.
He's sixth behind Stroud and Burrow and Allen.
For what? For what? Fantasy?
For quarterback rankings.
Oh, okay.
Power rankings.
Okay.
Going into next year, post-draft. He has a winning record against Josh Allen, winning record against Joe Burrow. He's a two-time MVP, two-time first-team All-Pro. Those guys don't have a lick of that on their resume. Joe Burrow has one Linsanity run to the Super Bowl, and they lost.
Linsanity run for Joe Burrow.
Arnett.
He still doesn't have that on his resume. Lamar has a higher career passer rating and quarterback rating than Josh Allen. It's not even a discussion. He has one peer, and it's Patrick Mahomes. He's led him to the first seed, 3 years in a row.
But he hasn't even played. He doesn't even listen. And I can't believe I'm doing this, Arnett. But I'll just give you a little pushback because you used a Jeremy Lin analogy for Joe Burrow, which I think is a little harsh, But Burrow's done it. Burrow's beaten Mahomes in a playoff game. Burrow made the Super Bowl. Burrow had an opportunity with the ball in his hand to win a Super Bowl. Lamar's never made it. Lamar hasn't gotten past Mahomes in the playoffs, and that's part of the reason why he may have a lower power ranking in whatever, website you're on.
So that from Rich Eisen earlier in the week, Sarah, as promised, gotta love how Twitter and X works. It's a small community within the Ravens world. And I got a random follow from Arnett in Maryland yesterday, and that led to DMing. And that led to right now him joining the show. Arnett in Maryland, it's so good to have you on, brother. And you are the man this week in Ravens Nation. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How y'all doing?
Good. What has the reaction been, Arnett? What has it been like for you online?
All my friends are just ecstatic. I mean, it's just hilarious. I've been a passionate sports fan forever, so it's kind of it's nice to be able to talk a little bit to the big wigs like Rich Eisen. So it was special.
Yeah, how'd you get through? You just call a number and you try to get through? What was that process like?
I just called a number. It was just convicting on my heart. Like somebody needs to say something.
He said it's convicting on his heart. I love it.
Amazing. Yeah.
So
we're
I just
all
called.
wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're all wondering where the Linsanity analogy came from. I think a lot of people are enjoying that aspect of what you had to say. So did that just kind of come out, or did you prepare this prior to going on the show?
That kind of just came out. I'm on, sports Twitter all the time, and other people have said it before, and it just felt right to say because I have my own personal vendettas. But the Linsanity run is just like a good 1 year run, and it was good. They had a great team that year, and they went, but I just haven't heard of them since then.
Wait,
in your mind, Sarah? In his world, he hadn't heard jack about the Cincinnati Bengals since then. I love it.
You said you have your own personal vendetta. Are you talking about against the Bengals?
Yeah, against the Bengals. I just don't like how they act. And then
the fans or the players.
It took the players.
Okay.
It took them a 100-yard fumble return the next year to beat Tyler Huntley in the playoff, and then they were talking about Burrowhead and all this other stuff, and I don't like that.
Did you get a chance? I don't know if the clip cut out, but obviously you talked about it. And then Rich is like, I can't believe I'm doing this, Arnett. I got to push back. And then he went on a little bit of his own like speech to stick up for Burrow. Did you get a chance to like push back a second time? And if not, what would you have said to that?
I didn't get a chance to, but like I said, he got his lunch money taken from Patrick Mahomes the next year in the AFC Championship. And we haven't heard from him since then. They talk about Lamar is brittle. Lamar can't finish the season, but Burrow didn't finish last year. And Lamar played 6 more games than him and only threw 1 more pick than he did. So I just don't think it's a discussion with who's a better quarterback. They talk a lot about Burrow as like a boogeyman, and he doesn't have like he has ice in his veins and stuff. But we haven't really seen that.
Yeah.
I think the pregame walk-ins and the cool videos that social media posts have kind of made that elevate to a whole nother stratosphere when it doesn't need to be that. So I think it's getting into the realm of him being overrated.
Sarah and I always look for ways to stick up for Lamar. Not that he needs it, but there's just this kind of ridiculous ongoing 10-plus year dating back to his Louisville days, literally narrative that's constantly attached to him, right, from a label standpoint. So I think what stood out to me is, you get an opportunity to go on a national platform and come prepared to take a stand for your guy number 8 is, I think, what stood out to both of us. And I think that's what probably resonated with the fan base, right? Because he doesn't deserve a lot of this discussion, this discourse that's surrounding him literally for 10 years now. And so I think that's what really resonated with the fan base. So kudos to you, Arnett.
I appreciate that.
Hey, real quick. So you said you've been a sports fan, but how long have you been a Ravens fan? How long have you been a Lamar fan? Like, what's your background there?
Well, my family moved from Los Angeles to Maryland in 2009. So I needed to pick up a team. So, the Redskins at that time weren't doing a lot. So I like the Ravens, cool colors. I was about 10 years old anyway.
Okay.
But I started watching Lamar in college. During that first game, his sophomore year, I think, when he broke out versus Florida State, I was like, this is a guy. So I've been watching him since then. And, just his whole story, how people were telling him to go play running back and wide receiver. The Ravens trading back into the first round, the picture of him sitting there laying down on the draft table with his mom. Like, it just touches your heart. You feel something when you see that stuff. So I want him to succeed. I want him to win all the Super Bowls he can, all the MVPs, because that's my guy.
Heck yeah. I love it, man. Hey, how far away from each other are we? I'm in Canton. You in Baltimore? Or?
Oh, I'm in DC.
Oh, you're in DC. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Gotcha.
You annoy all those fans down there for us, Arnett.
For sure.
I love it. Arnett, this is fun, man. Thanks for being open to doing it. It was fun how social media works. We found you like literally within like probably few hours after that tweet of mine went out. So we appreciate you coming by and thanks for all the support that you give the show.
For sure. Y'all have a great one.
You too, Arnett.
You too. Arnett in Maryland, as promised, in the flesh, DC's own.
He's so great. He's
so
great. He's down there. Yep. I'm sure he's just trolling them all.
Oh, that was cool right there.
Yeah.
So you pulled in some Mina Kimes content, who always has a great analytical mind, especially when talking Ravens.
Listen, I have been on the more to tight end 12 personnel set train for quite some time. So anytime I hear somebody else talking about it, I have to play it. So here's Mina talking with our guy, Dominique Foxworth, who was on the show during the Super Bowl. And she explained how good the Ravens are in 12 and 21 personnel.
Something that I thought was really heartening watching them that I think that they can continue building on is just how unbelievably efficient the play action pass attack was last season, which is kind of what we expected with Monken. Lamar was second QBR with play action, and they ran it a fair amount, but I think they could run it more, especially when you consider that when they were in, we were like, oh, they've got OBJ, now they're going to be in 11 personnel, and they did use more 11 personnel for sure, but when they were in their heavier groupings, and when they passed out of those groupings, so a lot of times play action, 12 personnel, 0.57 EPA per play when they passed, which is unbelievable. It's the best in the NFL. 21 personnel, which is significant, by the way, because the Dolphins and the Niners use it so much, along with the Ravens. So you're going up against offenses that use it a lot and are very prolific. Still, first in EPA per play when they passed out of 21, more than the Dolphins and the Niners. So I feel like we saw sort of, okay, now they're really, really tying the run and the pass together. This passing attack is finally caught up to the rushing attack. Year 2 of that, I feel like it's going to be even better.
Wow.
First of all, I loved Dominic's kind of like facial expressions every time she like explained where they ranked in EPA and so she'd like say it and he's like, oh, okay, all right, And here's what's crazy when she was talking about how good the Ravens were with the play action. Now we're gonna add Derrick Henry to that.
Yeah.
Now you got to be like, wait, is he gonna hand it off to? Oh no, he didn't hand off to Derrick. Oh, we got to get back.
Right.
Like, and you were already first. And to her point, when the Dolphins and the 49ers both played it a lot and were pretty good at it. Oh, but the Ravens were better in terms of EPA. So let's go, Monken.
That's highly encouraging.
Yeah,
that's a deep dive right there. That's like the Todd Monken influence right there.
Yeah,
like those are 2 areas that you can really lean on and hold your hat going into year 2. With the addition, to your point, of Derrick, that's just going to completely give them so much more balance and stability.
It's going to be great. I just want to see him lean into it. Now, to her point, I also don't want to like never run 11 personnel.
Yeah.
You do still have Nelly and then obviously Bateman and Zay out there. And so like mix it up for sure. We don't want to become one-dimensional, but just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, NFL on CBS tweeted out the win percentages of all teams over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ravens are 6th over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
With
tied 6th with Dallas.
Tied 6th with Dallas with a 60.1 win percent. What's crazy, so we're going back 10 years, that we're going into 7th for Lamar. So 6 of these 10 years is Lamar era, and he's 75%. So he's bringing it up.
Yeah, for sure. Kansas City, New England, of course, 1-2. Pittsburgh, Green Bay, Seattle round out your top 5 there. So good spot to be in.
They're all prolific organizations, right? It doesn't surprise you.
The entire first column.
It doesn't surprise you. Yeah.
It's just stable. Well, Dallas doesn't necessarily scream stability at you, but at least they're regular season stable, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
Well, we all remember last year the Ravens traveled a lot, so much so it was over 25,000 miles in 2023. And as Kyle tweeted out, that was the 6th most of any NFL team a year ago. So they'll follow up that with a little bit more of again, I mean, you have to remember they're not going across the pond.
Right.
For example, they will go to the West Coast for the LA Charger game. But they're going to travel just over 15,000 miles in 2024. So
10,000 less.
Yeah, exactly. 10,000 less. So.
Okay. So last year, like you said, London, San Francisco, Arizona.
Yeah.
So those 3 put on a lot of mileage. This year, you got obviously all the AFC North, and you got to go to Kansas City.
Yeah.
LA. Then you got to go to Dallas, Houston, New York, and Tampa. It's really not that bad.
You can see why. That's not too bad at all. It's just one West Coast trip.
One West Coast trip, which is a 3-hour time change. Kansas City will be, and Dallas, I believe, are 2.
And remember, if it's a primetime game, that's always trickier too, just with the time change. But if what you were insinuating earlier on is correct, with the Harbaugh Bowl being in the works, which we'll find out later tonight, and a Thanksgiving matchup between the Chargers and Ravens, then that would be considered. I think that's beneficial because it's a Thursday night game, right? And so instead of it leaking into what would become a short week or something on a Sunday night game, I'd much prefer a West Coast game to be played on Thursday than I would any other day.
Right.
So there you have it. We'll have more specifics on what all of this means coming up later tonight when the, of course, schedule release is released on NFL Network in the 8 o'clock hour. And we're looking forward to being live with you from 7:30 to 9:30. Special guest and former Raven Tony Jefferson will be joining us later on tonight. Speaking of a former Raven, there's some reports out there that, it's confirmed that Jason Kelce's now going to be a part of the Monday Night Football broadcast crew, Monday Night Countdown. And the report from NBC, Sarah, is that Robert Griffin III is the odd man out. So Jason Kelce in, RG3 out. I don't think that means he's done with ESPN. He's still employed by ESPN.
Right.
It's just his duties will no longer consist of Monday Night Football. And I found this to be interesting because Jason is obviously, he and his brother right now, and the Swift effect that's in line with that, and just how much they've taken the league by storm. He's going to be looked at as a coveted piece. And unfortunately for RG3, I really don't think it's anything he could have done. I mean, this is out of his control.
Yeah.
The Kelce name right now is just something that you want to get attached to, regardless of who you are,
Yeah, well, I kind of felt bad a little bit for RG3. I mean, he was just on our show a little while ago, and we saw, and he was obviously a former Raven, and he's been a good mouthpiece to listen to when it comes to Ravens and Lamar Jackson stuff, because he still has connections there, and he's obviously was a backup to Lamar.
Yeah.
And so it's too bad. And then Pat Ricard, obviously his former teammate, quote retweeted the news that RG3 would be out on Monday Night Football, and he wrote, "Why not both?" And then Robert obviously appreciated that because he responded to Pat and said, "Love you, brother," with the thank you / prayer emoji. So, and I was talking to my husband about this, and I was like, this is, when it comes to being a player analyst, it's just like being a player and a new crop of rookies are coming in. Because every year you're going to have a crop of guys that retire, and you're going to have big names that come with that. And Kelce's one of them.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's tough. I remember, like, Ray Lewis had his run and then was gone. Steve Young had a longer run and then he was gone. And it's just like, you always get new guys. And part of it is how well you perform in terms of articulating and breaking down the game. And the other part is, do you still have contacts now that you're 3 or 4 years out? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you still right? Are you still plugged into the locker room like you were the first year you left the team? You know? And so all that kind of plays into it. And it's hard to keep those jobs.
Oh my gosh. Marketability, relatability, and all of a sudden RG3's been out of the league for several years. Jason just retired this offseason, as we know. And right then and there, like, the new guy, to your point, comes in, and it's just as cutthroat and competitive as your time as a player. Maybe not just as, but.
Well, in some ways it's more because there's less spots.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that RG3, he sees the moment because he started his own podcast, right? Kelce already has one. So he's got that going for him. Like you said, he's still with ESPN, but there's fewer spots to be on that spot on that national stage.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
It's crazy.
And of course, again, that Taylor Swift thing cannot be overlooked. When she is a part of your family, at least through Travis, Jason's brother, like, that's going to be a part of the equation. Her status, her brand has put the Kelces into just an entirely new, not that they needed it, but this is just a new stratosphere.
Well, I was going
to,
do you think, I don't know that played into Jason getting this job though. I agree that it introduced them to, like, the fact that my daughters somewhat know because I have football going on all the time, but my daughter's friends that are 11 know who Travis Kelce is. You're absolutely right. Like, they went into another stratosphere because they're now introduced to a whole other audience. You know what I mean? But in terms of getting this job, I don't think it has to do with Taylor.
Yeah, maybe not directly, but certainly doesn't hurt in terms of getting more eyeballs. He's as forward-facing and visible right now as he will ever be. And even his wife, Kylie, God bless her. She seems like such an awesome person. Like, her profile, her overall image has gotten to a point where she's getting endorsements. She's got a social media brand. It's really unbelievable to see what's taken place within the last year or so between those two families. So that's that. The aforementioned Ray Lewis celebrates a birthday today, along with team president Sashi Brown. So happy birthday to both gentlemen. a legend, a Hall of Famer, and somebody who is taking over for, I know who we both believe is a legend and a Hall of Famer in our eyes, and Dick Cass, somebody who knew really well, and my time in Ravens radio, I think, were his last couple of years. I think he retired during the pandemic, right? Like 2020 or so, or maybe somewhere around there. But been there for a long time. You added this one in, and I saw it as well. Definitely was interesting to see that Tom Brady went on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark and said that, he enjoyed it and whatnot, the roast that aired on Netflix last week, but he didn't enjoy how it affected his kids. And
he said, I love when people are making fun of me, but you don't see the full picture all the time. I'm going to be a better parent as I go forward because of it. So last time we talked about it, I hadn't even seen any clips. And then I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go watch this. And I didn't, but after we were done, like the clips started hitting my timeline. Yeah. And I will say, like, that's got to be tough. It's tough to be the kids of parents that are in the spotlight. And, they've already been through a public, separation and divorce and all that kind of stuff. So,
and there was rumors about infidelity, and that came up into the roast.
Yeah, so it all comes up, and it's all, I'm sure they didn't love it. And then like their friends have easy memes from social media where you just clip out 5 seconds or whatever. So I could understand that. The only like positive that maybe he can take out of it for his kids, or a positive, maybe there's more, is like, look at how you react when people are making fun of you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He did well with that.
He did
like really well.
Like you don't take it too seriously. You don't let it control your life. You don't, this and that. But when you put yourself up for those things, you're thinking, oh, I can handle it. But it's like, wait, can my kids handle it? And so that's got to be. And it's also, by the way, it's also easier to take on things when it's about yourself. But if it's about a parent or your child, it hits different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or your ex.
Like, yeah, I'm teaching you how to take it when people are coming at you, but when people are coming at your dad or your mom or your son or your daughter, it hits different.
Yeah. No, this is, look, it was a major success by all accounts in terms of, interest and engagement and viewership for Netflix's case, but you don't think about the trickle down effect sometimes. And so anyway, I'm actually been meaning to watch that entire interview because Tom, in his later years here, post football, is becoming really, really insightful, I think, during interviews, and Ryan just had him on. So it's like a 2+ hour conversation that I think there was like a Fanatics tie in there because Tom works with Michael Rubin and Fanatics. And then I think the Pivot just went through some new rebranding, if I'm not mistaken. So that's probably how they landed this. But
well, and also, not that it's like connected, but they just announced, I think around the same time that we got announcements of Ravens playing Chiefs, is his first game where he's going to be a color analyst is going to be for Fox, right? And Cleveland, Dallas.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be interested. It's just like when Tony Romo first got his chance. Like, I'm just going to be interested to see how he does. I mean, he obviously has a phenomenal mind.
Yes.
But
can he articulate it in high leverage,
right,
high fast-paced moments like Tony can,
right? Because that's it's a different thing to be able to be succinct and passionate and enlightening to a wide array of an audience that have different knowledge of the game, and to do it in a few seconds. Yeah. It's another skill.
My only knock on Tony is sometimes he can get so wound up that it can come across as like kind of loud, like he's talking over himself a little bit in major moments, allowing himself to feel the adrenaline, which is really easier said than done. It's easy to allow yourself to get affected by that shot of just adrenaline when high big moments happen during games. I wonder if Tom will come in a little bit more even keeled because of all of those moments that he's been in throughout his career.
Right.
Tony had never played, did Tony ever play for a Super Bowl? He never got to a Super Bowl, did he? No.
I think
I don't think Dallas has been to a Super Bowl.
His reputation was that he would choke in the postseason too. I just can't remember if it was also in the Super Bowl.
I don't think Dallas got to it in the Tony Romo era. They haven't been to a Super Bowl in Lord knows how long. So.
Speaking of commentators, by the way, I've held on to bookmarks, but we've had so much content we haven't been able to get to it. But if we can get to it at some point this week, you had tweeted the call from Carlin when the Nuggets hit that last second shot at halftime, right?
Yeah.
And I think because I watched that a few times, obviously, A, I love the way he calls games, and B, it was the Nuggets when I grew up in Colorado. So my timeline fed to me a guy who put together a thread of the best Carlin calls.
Oh, Kevin Harlan. I'm sorry. Yeah, Kevin Harlan.
Kevin Harlan. I put the K and into the last name. Kevin Harlan. One of them was the Lamar Houdini thing.
Oh yeah.
But I want to bring in. He had like 20. I'd like to bring in 3. Yeah, I want to bring in like 3 or something at the end of the show tomorrow, maybe 3 or 4, because he really is the GOAT.
Oh, I love the guy.
I need him doing more Ravens games. I just need it in my life.
Yeah. And you know what? He used to come on the radio show with me when he would have CBS Ravens games. And so let's make a note that when we figure out which games are CBS, let's try to get him on, because I have his number and we have a relationship back from a couple of years ago when I was in radio, and he is the nicest guy.
Of course.
Which was really cool to see him go up in the rafters or have his jersey. I can't remember what Minnesota presented him, because he got his start in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And they awarded him with something during the pregame ceremony, and he is just a really, really super guy. So anyway, again, one more time, we've mentioned it many times throughout this, but just in case you're just tuning in, the latest schedule leak is out. The Texans, according to Jordan Schultz, are going to host the Ravens on Christmas Day, Week 17, in a game that's going to exclusively be aired on Netflix. So make your plans accordingly. We don't know what the time is specifically for that one. We wish it was Christmas night, selfishly, like we did last year in San Francisco, which allowed us to at least celebrate throughout the day and keep somewhat sense of normalcy. But my gut, Sarah, is telling me that's not going to be the case, but we'll wait and see.
I think I might be a little bitter if we get a Christmas Day and a Thanksgiving Day. Yeah. That's going to tick me off a little bit.
It's kind of feeling like we're heading in that direction.
You better give me at least night if you give us Thanksgiving.
Shout out Mike Batting and Sharu Hashmi. Thank you both for believing in what we're building here in Baltimore and supporting us through Patreon this month. You guys are signed up for our $4.99 level shout out tier on a monthly basis, and we thank you guys. If you guys are interested in doing the same, visit patreon.com/RavensVault podcast to learn more about what we're offering here inside the channel. So with that, we have a meeting coming up in about 30 minutes from right now, which we're excited about. And hopefully that means good things are coming for our 3rd NFL season together. Hard to believe this will be year number 3 this upcoming fall. And with that, special thanks to High Grounds Cafe for sponsoring our episode today via Patreon, as well as one of our small business Patreon title sponsors. And we're looking forward to tonight. 7:30 to 9:30, our annual NFL schedule release live stream party. Hopefully you can join us for that. And anything else before we jump?
No, sir.
Cool. So for Sarah Ellison, I'm Bobby Trossett signing off from this Wednesday Ravens Lunch Hour live stream, a jammed show. Thanks to Brooke Pryor. Thanks to our guy Arnett in Maryland. We didn't even get his last name. He was awesome, though. And thanks to you, all of you, for watching, all 2,000 plus of you. Hope you'll join us a little over 6 hours from now when we kick off our schedule release live stream. So